Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Strive for Greatness and Let's Talk Stroke Show. Well, I'm like messed up here. Anyway, thanks for being here, everybody. And this morning I have an amazing, terrific stroke survivor guest, William Lowe. He was 17 years old, so let's say 17 years young when he had a stroke. So real quick, I just want to reiterate that stroke does not discriminate at all. So let's bring on William and meet him. And good morning, William. How are you?
Good morning, Jerry. What's going on?
I know it's late there. It's 15 hours ahead, so it's Saturday morning.
Yes, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, exactly.
Saturday in Sydney.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So, and I'll once in a while I'll bring some comments up so you can see. But it really is amazing. You were 17 when you had your stroke. So can I just ask, what were you doing before your stroke? Going to high school?
Yeah, definitely going to high school. So I'm just going to give you the Cliff Notes version because usually when I do presentations, I go for 20 minutes. So I don't want to waste your time and go over.
No
so basically, before my stroke, I was basically your typical teenager,
right?
In high school, and on the outside, it appeared that I had everything handled. Had the whole 5-year spreadsheet going of what I wanted to go, where I wanted to go, and what I wanted to do. And everyone didn't expect me to have a stroke. I was that kid in high school who, was good at everything for some reason, and he was, and they were talented at a lot of things. Obviously, I had very high marks, going to a very, very good school at the time, and pretty much got to a point in my life where I thought I was invincible and made of titanium, which is always a bad place to be. And I thought I could do anything I wanted to do, and I think it got to the point where I had a really good social life. My marks were great. Everything came to me very easy. That I started to believe my own bullshit that I was a lot better than I actually was, without actually knowing that I wasn't actually that good. And then basically I got complacent. And I remember after my trial exams, so we have trial exams we do before our university entrance exams.
Okay.
I pretty much put my foot off the pedal, and I just spent the break between the trial exams and the actual university exams just partying and just not really having my eye on the ball in terms of studying and making sure I was well prepared.
Right.
And this wasn't good. And I remember about a week before the exams were about to start, this is when I started to panic. And as you can probably imagine, there was a lot of expectation for me to perform and for me to be as great as I was before and get the same marks as I did when I was in high school. And so I remember the morning I woke up, I told myself that I had partied too much and it was probably time to get this studying sort of handled. Because this was obviously something which is very important to me. I've been working 5 years to get into university and become a architect. And I remember that morning, I woke up. I just studied for 3 or 4 hours straight. Didn't really bother resting. Just trying to get in as much as I could. Memorize as much as I could, in order to meet my own expectations of myself, which were obviously too high at this point in time because of my reputation, which I'd built up before.
Do you think you were stressed out and all that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Wow.
I think I was someone who sort of didn't know why they were successful, because I hadn't gone through the underdog process of studying hard, working hard. That was just a habit which I'd built up.
Right.
Throughout school. It wasn't something which I actually set aside time to do. It was just something I knew that I had to do, and so I did it. but it wasn't something I actually put time aside to do it. So I didn't really have a lot of failures at that point. I probably maybe only had one or two, but in terms of study, that always came naturally to me. And then, yeah. So anyway, I was studying for a couple of hours, and I remember I took a break, and then I walked to the front door, and this was sort of the this is sort of like the make or break point in the story. And the reason why I say this is because when I got to the door, I looked outside, and at this point in time, there were really only two things which I enjoyed most in my life, and that was basketball and lifting weights. Right. And I remember as I was standing at the door, as I went to pull the door handle down, I literally stopped right there. And I got that feeling in my gut where it was telling me to go outside to play basketball. But then at the same time, my logical brain, or what I was thinking, was telling me to lift weights, because I wasn't very good at lifting weights at the time. Right. And it's sort of like one of those moments in life when you know that you're at a crossroads, where you know that you're supposed to do one thing. Sorry, your gut or your heart's telling you to do one thing, but your brain is telling you, or the logical side of you is telling you to do another part. And then obviously being a very logical, obviously being a very logical thinker. Yeah. At that point in time, I told myself that I was already pretty good at basketball. However, I wasn't very good at lifting weights. And then so I walked away from the door, and I went up to the chin upper. I did a couple of pull-ups. And as I came down, that's basically when the stroke happened. I had the massive headache. Obviously the pins and needles down my entire left side. And yeah.
You said it was 2 months before your 18th birthday.
Yes. So that was in October. And my birthday is near Christmas.
Wow. So when you had your stroke, did you remember anything? Did you know what a stroke was, first of all?
Oh, no, not at all. The only stroke I'd heard about at that point in my life was heat stroke. And so when the stroke happened and I got that massive headache, I was obviously a little bit confused for a second, but eventually I convinced myself that it was just a headache I could sleep off. And then once I had slept enough, then I could get back up and study again. So I remember I walked over to the rumpus room, and for some odd reason, I decided to sleep it off on the floor, which was extremely stupid. And 20 minutes later, when I decided to get back up, that's sort of when I realized that my entire left side was paralyzed and it couldn't move at all.
Wow. Yeah, I know that feeling. So did somebody find you, or because you couldn't go to the hospital because you were kind of incapacitated? So did someone find you like on the floor, or?
Oh yeah. I mean, my brother found me 5 hours later. So the stroke happened at around maybe 11 o'clock in the morning, or 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And while I was lying on the floor, and when I realized that my left side was paralyzed, obviously I tried to soldier through it and try and get back up with my right side to stand up. But after a while, I realized it was impossible because my entire left side was weighing me down. So I just waited.
Wow. That's amazing. So then, did you after 5 hours, your brother took you to the hospital or an ambulance?
Oh well, my brother came home. He picked me up off the ground. Obviously, he didn't know what was going on because no one in the family had any medical education at all. My mom came back from work, and then she was the only one who did any first aid training, and she identified it was a stroke. And then I went to hospital. But by then it was obviously too late. I didn't get the blood clot busting treatment, and then I pretty much had to just work my way up from ground zero and just figure out everything else.
Right. So wow. So 17 years old, and how long did you spend in the hospital, or in ICU, or was it rehab, or?
Well, I mean, in total, I spent probably 3 months in the hospital. Yeah, three months in the hospital, but that's only because they gave me an extension because I was able to walk by myself with a stick by the end of 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good. And so then, did you have obviously family support, and were there friends? Did your family were there all the time?
Oh yeah. My family was there throughout the whole way, and my friends were 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 there as well.
That's terrific, because that's important to have great family support. I mean, I know from my own experience. So now you got out of the hospital, and from there, what happened?
Well, okay. So after I got discharged from the hospital, that was sort of when I went through like a sort of period of depression for maybe a month or two, and that's sort of when I got a little bit upset because I sort of took a really hard look at myself in the mirror, and I realized that I had messed up.
Hmm.
Having I'd 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 messed up having been a person who was quite successful in the past, and I kind of felt angry at myself because I couldn't prevent this from happening, and now I sort of had to figure out how to come back from this. In the past, I had come back from failures I had quite easily, but this was something which is I wasn't sure at the time whether or not it was possible because at that point in time, not a lot of information was given to me about recovery after stroke.
Right.
Actually, there was virtually no good information about recovery after stroke. We're talking about almost close to 9 years ago. So in 2011, yeah.
Yeah. And not to take off track there, but can you see Mike Peters' question? William, can I ask your mental state in hospital, please?
Oh well, right. I guess when I was in hospital, I was really sad and depressed. I was really confused because I didn't have any guidance on what sort of things I had to do to get the ball rolling. Like I still remember when I asked my therapist, how can I make things happen or how can I recover? They didn't tell me do A, B, C, exercise, and this is what you'll get. But rather, they just gave me a really weird analogy. They just said something about neuroplasticity, and they said that think about it like real estate. If you don't jump on the prices soon enough, then they'll go up, and therefore, if you don't exercise your brain, then you will lose whatever potential you have with recovery.
Right.
And it didn't make sense to me at that time because as a 17-year-old, I'm not interested in real estate. I don't get the connection. You know what I mean?
I know. Yeah, exactly. So hopefully that answers your question, Mike. So now you're kind of going in a different direction than what you were thinking about going to architecture. That's correct?
Yeah, that's right. So before my stroke, I was actually really keen on becoming an architect. I even got to art school, believe it
Wow.
or not. And then so I really thought that I had everything handled. Everyone thought that I was going to be like some superstar, rock star.
Right.
By the time I finished high school, yeah, and then obviously it didn't happen. And then so after my stroke, I obviously took a year off just to collect myself and work on my recovery, with the intention of going back to studying architecture. And I actually made that happen. So after the year off, I managed to go back to uni on a part-time basis, and I studied architecture for a little bit.
Right.
Actually, it was a double degree. It was engineering with architecture, and I did that for a while. But during that year, when I resumed uni, that was sort of when I realized that I wasn't passionate about it anymore. However, because I'd spent that entire year between my stroke and actually going back to uni, spending time with a lot of therapists and really learning how to recover from stroke and and having them as my best friends, that's when I realized I was more passionate about recovery after stroke than anything else.
Right.
It was the only thing I thought about, and it was pretty much taking up most of my time at that point in my life. And that's when I realized that after a couple of speeches I did to some stroke survivors and some clinicians, that I sort of had an intuitive understanding of how the brain recovered after stroke. I don't know how this happened. Maybe it's because I just took in everything that my clinicians and my doctors told me like a sponge at that point in time. Yeah.
Yeah. So you
and then after that year in studying architecture, that's when I realized that I had to make a change. And so I switched degrees, and then I started a degree in occupational therapy, and that was in 2014.
So 2014. So you started that. And if everybody, I don't know if I mentioned, William is in Australia. So so you went into occupational therapy, and what did you learn from that? Because I know we've talked about that, and it's great story.
Yeah, it is a really interesting story. So when I made the transition from architecture to occupational therapy, I obviously came into the degree of occupational therapy thinking that I was a rock star and thinking that I knew everything, because as a patient, I'd experienced everything
Yes.
already. So I thought that because I've already got the patient experience and the knowledge that my therapist had taught me, that I could knock this out of the park and it'll be super easy for me. But when I started the degree and when I started going out on placements on my own, I quickly realized that a lot of the things which they taught me in university, they didn't match up to what I experienced as a patient. And in some circumstances, a lot of the time, some of the therapists, they wouldn't necessarily do what was in the best interest of the client.
Right.
In that in university, right, what they teach therapists is they don't teach them necessarily to help the person get a specific result in their recovery, but rather to make sure that they're good enough to get by. And what I mean when I say this is that in hospital, they just want to make sure that you're able to dress yourself and go to the toilet, and that's their definition of okay. And so because the therapist is working underneath a system, they can't do anything to go against what the hospital defines as physically okay as a recovery after stroke, for an example.
So were you told you plateaued?
Well, I wasn't told I plateaued, but when I was in hospital, I was told that I wouldn't be able to walk out of hospital.
Wow.
Yeah, but then a week later, funnily enough, I actually walked out of hospital with the cane.
Well, yeah, because you showed them. So, so when you went through your process of your OT school, did you finish that?
Oh, well, I mean, I got to my third year. I got to my third year, well, pretty much on the transition between my third year and my final year.
Right.
And throughout my studies, because I had all this knowledge, I was showing up to placement, and pretty much they were marking me down, because whenever the supervisor wanted to offer a treatment, I asked them whether or not they could give them the best treatment, which was the stuff which was in the medical journals. And then they got angry at me because of that, and so they were getting a little bit upset because they thought I was like showing them up.
Right, because you were, like you just said, you were a patient. You knew exactly what you needed to be told from your therapist, and you weren't told that. So now you know what you feel like you knew what to do now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think there was a disconnect because whenever I saw a therapist, they were being supportive of the clients they were helping, by obviously helping them get out of hospital and do the things they want to do. but if the client asked them, whether or not, like I guess why they should do a particular exercise, most of the time the therapist wouldn't necessarily explain to them why they had to do the exercise. They just said, well, that's how it is. Just do it. Sort of like just do the exercise, no questions sort of approach. And then what I realized is that by not giving the client the explanation behind why to do the exercise, they're actually worse off, because once they leave the hospital, they don't know what got them that success or what got them that improvement.
Yeah, I understand, because when I've gone to therapy for 9.5 years, about 6 months a year, except this year is a little different, obviously, because of this pandemic. But there were so many times over the last couple of years, I was told when I go to therapy, okay, what do you want to do? I think, okay, I don't know. You need to tell me. So I was never told. Just the last 2 years, I have to ask what I want to do or be told. So I got me really confused with that. So I'm sure you understand that.
Yeah, definitely. Exactly. And I think I think within the context of recovery after stroke, that's really important, because we don't know how the brain, I mean there isn't a lot of knowledge on how the brain recovers after stroke. And especially for someone who's just had a stroke and doesn't have that education on, how the brain recovers after stroke, they want that certainty of, what can they do to get the ball rolling in their recovery, rather than being told, I mean, I don't know if this is what you've experienced similarly, or what your audience has experienced similarly, or rather than being told that this is as much as you've recovered, and there's no more hope for you. We'll just have to hope for the best.
Yeah. Because I was told I plateaued. This was a year after my stroke, so that really confused me. So now you're doing some things differently, because obviously you can't. Were you working at all after you had your stroke, or?
No, I wasn't. So I was on welfare payments throughout my time at university.
Right.
And then after 3 years of just showing up and being marked down and being told that I can't do something beyond the hospital,
Right.
the university just got fed up, and they told me to take a break, and then I just got fed up, and then I just left it, because I was helping some people on the side while I was studying, and I realized that I could actually get better results with them than their therapist. And this all came down to how I explained things, so that the survivor could actually understand what was going on, and actually gave them certainty that it could work out, rather than just being told to do an exercise and see how they go.
Right.
I was telling them, okay, you can do this exercise. The reason why this exercise would work for you is because when you're doing this exercise, what your brain's doing internally is A, B, C.
Yeah.
And therefore, this is going to happen.
Right. And look, so Mike, I'm not a textbook case. I'm Mike Peters, an individual stroke survivor. I agree. He also asked you, how did you concentrate with post-stroke fatigue?
Well, that's an interesting one. I would recommend coffee. I was drinking quite a lot when I was studying.
Yeah.
I found that without the coffee, I got maybe 30 to 40 minutes of good concentration, but with the coffee, I could go 1 hour.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So, okay. So now, because what I'm doing is, I post these videos not really to make me like, oh, I'm a superstar. Not at all. I post them, and then I look back, and I've told you about this too, that I look and say, oh my gosh, I am like I'm walking like a penguin. I can't lifting the hip wrong, but I concentrate real hard trying to figure it out. So I'm confused, like, okay, how do I fix myself? How do I, because I feel like I'm going to hurt myself more as far as the bones rubbing together or something is not right. But then you made a good point, because what you could teach, because what you've been through.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so first of all, and this is based on my understanding, because I've got two sides of the coin here, right? I've got the occupational therapy side,
Right.
and then I've got the survivor side as well, which is great. And I read a lot of research articles to really understand this and sort of simplify this so that I could understand a lot better, and so other people could understand it a lot better. But basically, with you, the first thing we have to have a look at, and I'm sure it's not just yourself who is feeling this way with your hip and the way you're walking, is that we have to understand that this is what's going on inside your brain or upstairs, right?
Right.
And basically, it means that your brain's adapted itself in such a way that this is how it prefers to walk in order to get by with walking, right?
Right.
And the reason why I say this is because our brains are very lazy in nature. They pick up habits quite quickly, and they always want to do things the easy way, even though it might not necessarily be the best way. So when you first had your stroke, your brain quickly realizes that one leg is actually a lot stronger than the other leg.
Yeah.
And it can actually get by with walking by relying mainly on the stronger leg to do it.
Right.
Now, before the stroke, whenever we used to walk, both our legs would actually take on equal amounts of our body weight. So our right leg would take on 50% of our body weight, our left leg would take on 50% of our body weight. Immediately after the stroke, because your brain realizes that one leg is a lot stronger than the other leg,
Yeah.
it no longer starts to put 50% of its body weight on both legs, but rather it starts to put maybe 80% of the body weight on the stronger leg, and then maybe 20% of the body weight on the left leg. And that's why with a lot of stroke survivors who I've spoken to, they've found that whenever they're walking, they find that they're leaning more towards one side, and then as they're transitioning over to the other side, there's like sort of like a waiting period where they're trying to talk their brain up to lifting up the other leg or the left leg.
That's so
And then
cool.
that's basically where they throw their affected leg forward, and they also get that big hip hitch at the exact same time because they're using so much effort to lift up that left leg. It's because they're using the stronger leg as a sort of anchor to sort of stabilize the weight of their body so that they can get leverage to lift up their affected leg and throw it forward. And this is all a compensatory sort of approach which the brain has taken up because it realized that it could get by with the stronger leg when it first had the stroke in hospital.
Yeah, it is funny because I really think that I'm doing it right, but then I get confused and look down. Wow, I'm not doing it right. But I really try to concentrate to make that I could do it. But I find myself looking at it. I'm not doing anything right. I'm trying to put weight on each side, but I'm not really doing it right. So you and I are going to work together right this Sunday and see maybe if there's something what you've been through as far as the schooling that could help me to see how bad I really am. So
yeah, that's right, definitely. And look, I mean, it's not just when you're walking, but every time you've gotten up off of bed to go to the bathroom, or every time you've gotten up from a chair, you've probably relied mainly on the stronger side to get up, because that's just how your brain's adapted. And so with a lot of survivors out there, and I mean, it's not just yourself, but for ones who are like maybe 5, maybe 6 years, or maybe even 7 years down the track, their brain has literally accumulated a whole entire mountain of bad habits of wanting to rely on the stronger leg to do everything.
Oh yeah, exactly. And and I know the thing is I know what I should be doing, but I catch myself all the time not doing it.
Yeah, so, exactly. Because it's your brain which has been conditioned to want to do it this way, and and it's kind of good because as a person who's, I mean, this is going to be really abstract, but as a person who's outside of the brain, it's sort of your responsibility as a stroke survivor to police your brain into doing the things which it used to do
Exactly.
before the stroke, and make sure it does it correctly, because otherwise your brain's just going to want to run things on its own agenda.
It's so true. And it's rewiring the brain if I don't do it that way that you're talking about.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's yes, lucky me, Mike, because I really. But you can actually reach out to William if you want, So don't feel that I'm the only one. But it's so true because I know about rewiring the brain. You've got to develop those habits, but I catch myself not concentrating. I'm just worried about not falling or something else, but I really need to concentrate on lifting my leg, or at least I think so, and make it my gait pattern the same.
Yeah, sure. And it's really difficult to do because remember, I mean, you mentioned you had your stroke 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, October 19th, 2010.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's 10 years of conditioning which your brain has gone through.
Yeah.
And it's going to be it's not going to be impossible to reverse that, but it's possible to reverse that and make things right again and show the brain how it used to walk before the stroke. And the best way to do this is to actually give the brain what I like to call a light bulb moment. Yeah. And this is what I explained to you earlier when we first met, how I explained to you how recovery after stroke, or this is how I like to think about it.
Right.
How I like to think about recovery after stroke is that it's kind of like learning how to drive a car for the first time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And for everyone out there listening to this at the moment, just listen real closely, because this was a huge game changer for me, the way I thought about this. So recovery after stroke is kind of like learning how to drive a car for the first time, right? So when you first learn how to drive a car, it's very easy to go forward, right? Because your eyes can actually see where you're going. But then when it comes to reverse parking, it's a different ballgame. And your brain has to figure out, okay, which way do I turn the wheel to actually get the car in the right spot? And you sucked at it for the first few times, but then you had that one instance where you turned the wheel the right way that one time, and after that time you did it, your brain never forgot which way to turn the wheel in order to get the car into the spot. And in other words, basically what happened, which resulted in your brain being able to remember and never forget how to reverse park again, is it was exposed to the experience of what it looked like and felt like to do something successfully for the first time. And therefore, your brain memorized all the sequences of steps which you did leading up to actually reversing the car into the parking spot. And it memorized this for the rest of its life, or the rest. Actually, I just lost my words at the moment. But basically, it memorized this for the entirety of whenever you would perform that skill again. So every time you wanted to reverse park again, basically what your brain would do is it would pull out that blueprint of what it had learned when you first got that light bulb moment, and then just repeat the exact same process. But it would adapt that current blueprint to whatever environment you were reverse parking in. So when you first learned how to reverse park a car, you probably practiced in like, I guess, outside your house. But you might have noticed that after you mastered the driveway, you would go to practicing parking in shopping malls or in parks or in cities. And then with every different environment, your brain would adapt to the variables of how to park in that current spot in that environment. So whether or not the spot will be a little bit smaller than the other spot, or I don't know, whatever, like whichever way the side mirror was facing. Your brain would take in all these variables, and then it would adapt that current blueprint, that first blueprint of when it first got that light bulb moment, and then it would change it up. And so your brain never really plateaued that way, because it kept being exposed to different variables in the environment, which justified to it that it has to up its game and keep improving in that skill.
Wow. Yeah, it's a great analogy. Exactly, with the driving the car. I learned to drive in a 72 Pinto, if you know what that is.
Right. Okay. No idea what that is, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm just here.
I guess
Yeah.
how this relates to recovery after stroke is basically it means that if you're in a situation in your recovery after stroke where you feel that maybe things are at a standstill or maybe changes aren't as quick as they used to be, it basically just means that your brain hasn't been exposed to that light bulb moment of what it used to feel like to do whatever you're trying to do before your stroke. So it probably means that you're in two situations. So the first situation is that you're fully recovered, so you're obviously 100% recovered. In other words, before your stroke, everyone's plateaued, right? Because they're all perfect in being able to reach for cobwebs and whatnot, and being able to use their hands and legs.
Exactly.
I mean, unless you're like superhuman or you have crazy dexterity, but basically everyone's on a plateau, right?
Yeah.
And how this relates to recovery after stroke is that the only reason why you get to a point where you're not seeing changes as quick as you used to, or maybe you're feeling things at a standstill, or maybe you've been told that you've hit a glass ceiling, is because whatever exercise you've been doing, it just hasn't given the brain enough variables to adapt to. And this is a very common situation for people, for survivors who I've talked to, who they've told me that they've been doing the exact same exercise months on end, and they've noticed that they're not seeing any changes. And the reason being is because they're just maintaining the levels of improvement which they initially got when they first did that exercise. So they might have gotten a little bit of a light bulb moment, but after that, because they didn't practice in different environments or modify that exercise like you would with the car driving, they just stayed at that same level, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it completely makes sense. Hopefully, everybody else it makes sense to, which I'm sure it does. But yeah, it's it is pretty amazing. I know that Mike, just so you know, Mike's a real funny guy. But he says we need more Williams, especially he's in South Wales, United Kingdom. That's where he lives. So.
Oh wow. Okay, so it's in the afternoon at the moment.
Yes, I don't know exactly the time. But yeah, there's so many. I know there's so many exercises that I do that I've been taught, and the only thing I gained is I have they tell me I'm done, I can do all these exercises at home. They give me the T-shirt and a bunch of papers, that say that exercise that I can do, and that's it. So then I have to go somewhere else to get more therapy. And I learn different therapists obviously teach other things, but it's really the same thing. I always get the same result at the end. So having some good perspective, just say with you, and I love that, to hear someone else that can see, wow, yeah, you're not doing this, but you are a stroke survivor and you've learned what it's like that you're not getting taught.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. And I mean, it was a huge game changer when I realized, like, I mean, I was a little bit disappointed when I realized that when I was in university, they were just teaching us to so we would have these assignments where we would have case studies where we would help a imaginary patient, recover after a stroke and whatnot, and the patient would want to go to the shops, right? And then basically what they would encourage us to do was they would encourage us to give the person a wheelchair, even though they could walk.
Really?
Which didn't make sense. Because in the back of my mind, if you put someone in a wheelchair, then it doesn't give them any incentive to sort of exercise. But if they can walk already, and if you work on the walking, then you can get them to a point where they can actually walk to the shops and do the things which they want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's sort of the disconnect I felt when I was in university, was that there was more of a focus on supporting them to do the bare minimum, rather than actually helping them get to the maximum level or potential, or I guess fulfill that potential, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. You weren't pushed. At least I wasn't.
No,
Right?
no. We weren't encouraged to go above them. And then so eventually I got fed up, and then I just left the university, knowing that I could help other people with my own experience. And now I help coach stroke survivors on how to recover after stroke, so that they can do it a lot faster and with a lot more ease, knowing that what they're doing is working, rather than obviously throwing darts at the dartboard and hoping that it works.
It's so true. So that's what you're doing now. It's helping other stroke survivors and
yeah, basically.
So, yeah, and virtually. You're obviously not.
Yeah, basically. I mean, I find that a lot of people I help, they've been told that, you know, there's no more hope for them, and that this is as much as they can recover. But then when they're talking to me, I just share with them what I've just shared with you just then about the car analogy, and about how the brain learns and whatnot, and they realize that this is a lot easier than it's made out to be. And if I just take on this perspective, I can actually make changes happen, rather than doing the exact same exercise, getting to a point where I plateau, and then hoping for the best, or just going by what my therapist said and going to another therapist to hope that's going to be the thing which is going to turn it all around for me.
Right. It makes sense. I love all that, and I love the analogy that you used about the car. I mean, the driving, because I completely understand. Stroke is not for the weak, and a lot of stroke survivors don't understand. Well, I guess we do understand, because I understand, but I try to tell myself I'm doing it right. But when I look at myself walking in that video, other ones I've done in the past, wow, I really got to improve my game. You know, and I've had the incident with the wheelchair, same thing, you know, so that I kept saying I can walk. Well, we'll work on that later. Yeah, that's frustrating.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's kind of like, playing basketball. I mean, if you ever played the sport, it's like practicing it's like practicing the way you shoot, but not actually shooting in the game.
Right.
And because you've never transitioned over to the game, your brain's only going to be good at shooting by yourself.
Right. Exactly. And I'd like to encourage, if anybody has any questions, or anybody want to, ask a question, if that's okay, William, because your knowledge that you've learned, because right now, let's see, you had your stroke at 17 years old, if anybody didn't catch that, and now you're 20, my brain, 27?
Okay, well, now I'm 26 years.
You're getting close to 27. How's that?
Yeah, 26 years old, getting close to 27. And I've pretty much been obsessed with everything to do with recovery after stroke.
Right.
So, I mean, if anyone has any questions about, I guess why it is that maybe they're not seeing changes as quick as they used to, or maybe you're in a situation like Jerry described. Whenever you're walking, you feel like your hip is sort of doing funny things, which it typically wouldn't have done before your stroke. Then, right. I mean, I invite you to ask a question about that, and perhaps I could provide some on that really quickly.
Yeah, and so, Mike, you're saying I will walk one day, but not like a penguin. See, joking around, because I feel like my grandkid told me I walk like a penguin, but that's okay. Okay, so here's another question. Who inspires you, William?
Who who inspires me? That's a really tricky question. I think that's a really deep question. I've never really thought about it. I think the person that inspires me is the person. I guess I've always asked myself, you know, who would I have been if I didn't have the stroke, versus who can I become now with the hindsight of having had the stroke. So I mean, as they say, you know, foresight is 20/20 and hindsight is 21/20, right?
Right.
So I guess when I started my journey in recovery after stroke, I sort of had a hard look at myself, and I told myself that I thought I had my life handled, and maybe that wasn't the case, and there was a lot more to this game of life than I thought. It wasn't just going to university, getting a degree, and then working a cubicle job, but rather it's about how you can help other people. And that's when I made that transition to doing the occupational therapy, and then also what I'm doing now. So I guess what inspires me the most is who I can be after I recover from the stroke. I mean, granted, I'm not there. I'm probably like 85% at the moment. But who can I be? I guess, how can I become the best version of myself in my recovery after stroke, knowing what I've gone through, and how can I use my experiences to help other people as well?
Yeah. And you're doing that now. I mean, that's a great point that Josh right here says, look in the mirror for inspiration. And I think that's true for you, William, because I get inspired by all stroke survivors. You know, seeing what they do, and you know what they can accomplish, and what they're doing to improve of their recovery. And you're making it happen. Before this, you were going to be an architect. Then after your stroke, you changed how you are now. So your passion is helping stroke survivors.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess what I'm really passionate about right now is just helping people who have had a stroke recover a lot faster and easier, because I know for sure when I first had my stroke back in 2011, a lot of the information which is out there, that wasn't available at the time. We were just told, or I was just told general information like, don't worry, you're young. Okay, you don't have to take responsibility. It will get better with time, so on and so forth. I'm not sure if any of you guys listening have heard the exact same advice, but that's basically what I heard when I was in hospital. And I remember back then, I didn't have anyone to talk to, and I would have killed to be able to talk to a future version of William who would actually come back down and tell me to take responsibility. Okay, do ABC. Don't do this and don't do that. These are the sort of mindsets you have to adopt in order to get into a recovery-oriented direction.
Yeah. I mean, at your age, you have so much information that you've either researched, and the schooling has really taught you what they taught you. It's what you taught yourself to see as a patient, what you're not getting out of that. So it's truly, for me, it's really inspiring for me to see you're changing a lot of things that I am now doing. And I really can't wait to have that first session with you, just to see.
Yeah, that's right. Wisdom comes from multiple perspectives, right?
Yeah.
I mean, clinicians only have one perspective, which is the textbook thing, unfortunately. But quite often as a survivor, at the end of the day, you have to look at yourself and you have to tell yourself that, this is my journey. It's really up to me to decide what comes next after I turn the page, or in this new chapter of my life. Because after you've had a stroke, for all of you guys who have been listening, everything for the rest of your life, it's completely different. You view it in a different lens than you used to before your stroke.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. So, Don Ogan.
Oh yeah.
He's asking a question. Why do we limp? Talk about neuroplasticity a little bit.
Okay. Hello, Don. I'm not sure when you joined, but in case you joined late, I did talk about why we limp earlier. But if you missed it, I'll go over it really quickly. Well, basically, the reason why we limp in recovery after stroke is because before our stroke, the way in which our brain used to distribute our body weight is that both our legs would take on 50% of our body weight. So our right leg would take on 50% of our body weight, and our left leg would take on 50% of our body weight. Now, our brain's very lazy, right?
Yeah.
And after stroke, your brain realizes that one leg is actually a lot stronger than the other leg. And because you're literally forced to walk after stroke in hospital, that's the first thing they get you to do. Your brain quickly realizes that it can actually get by with walking by relying mainly on the stronger leg to take on most of the weight of your body. And so from the moment you have your stroke, your brain has been conditioned to want to rely on that strong leg. That stronger leg to do most of your walking, and that's why you limp. Because rather than it being 50-50 like before the stroke, it becomes 80% of your body weight on your stronger leg, and maybe 20% of your body weight on your affected leg.
Yeah.
And they even encourage this further because what do they do in hospital? The therapist asks you to go upstairs with your strong leg first, right?
Yeah.
So for the rest of your recovery, you're going upstairs using the strong leg, which just reinforces the old pattern. Rely on the strong leg. That's how I'm going to get by with walking.
Yeah.
And I guess the only way to reverse this is to put your brain in situations where it gets a light bulb moment that, hey, I actually have another leg to actually distribute the weight on. I can use my affected leg to take that first step up the stairs, which is a really cool exercise you can do today to actually start to get a rhythm, get into more of a rhythm when you walk. Is rather than going up with your strong leg when you're going upstairs, go up with your affected leg.
Yeah, makes sense. Don, hope you got that. And I know that Mike Peters still asking a question about, do you have a book?
Mike, no, unfortunately, I don't have a book at the moment. I am working on one at the moment. It is on the, I put it on the bookshelf at the moment because, like I mentioned in the show, my primary focus now is helping other survivors recover from stroke, and I do that through a lot of coaching over Skype, where basically I just ask stroke survivors what they're going through, and then based on what they've told me, I paint a picture of, what it felt like for myself when I was in that situation, the sort of things I did to help myself get out of that situation, whether that be waking up your hand for the first time or being able to stop your knee from locking, which I know is a common thing which a lot of people I've met have gone through.
Yeah, very true. And so you're the best, William.
Thank you.
Yeah, Don, I don't know. Do you see the comments when I bring them up?
Yes, I can see it now.
Yeah. So good old Don. That's great. Here and Brooke Allen, nice to see you, Brooke. She's, if you could say good advice, use other affected leg first. Thank you. Today is the day for change. Get up and move.
Yeah, that's right. Taking responsibility. That's right. Okay. We have to give your brain the light bulb moment of what it felt like to once use the affected leg, like you would have before your stroke. Because if you think about how you used to do stuff before your stroke, whenever we go upstairs, you wouldn't go right, left on one step and then go up. You wouldn't go upstairs with 2 feet at a time, right? You would go upstairs with 1 foot at a time. So you would alternate between your right foot and your left leg. But in hospital, the therapists, they encourage going up with your stronger leg and then using the other leg to sort of support and come up, which means you're using the stronger leg to support all your weight as you're going up that first step and so on and so forth. And obviously this carries out for the rest of your recovery. But the way to reverse this is to just go back to the drawing board of how your brain used to do things and give it a reminder of what life was like or what that blueprint of that brain was like before you had your stroke. Because your brain already has the tools it needs to recover. Your brain already is wired to want to become better. We know this because of the car driving analogy. We know this because people participate in professional sports such as basketball, professional running. So, I don't know. I can't think of any other sports at the moment. So whatever you give the brain, whatever experience you give the brain is just going to take that in and it's going to process it and it's going to adjust that blueprint to become a lot better. So your brain already knows how to rewire. It's just up to us as the stroke survivors to give it the tools to help guide in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned that because I've learned because I thought I didn't know any better to use the non-affected foot to step first.
Okay. So basically, you might remember in hospital that the therapist, they asked you to go up the stairs with the stronger leg, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, this is just a sample exercise. This is just an example of an exercise you would do to give your brain that light bulb moment I mentioned.
Yes.
Of what it looked like and felt like to do something before your stroke, right? So rather than going up with your stronger leg, whenever you do stairs, you can try going up with your affected leg. So if your right side affected, if your right side is your stronger one and your left side is your affected, if your right side you're unaffected and your left side is your affected, you would go up with your unaffected leg first.
Yeah, but then because what I've done is like we had a house once that I had to walk upstairs and use the right way, one, the other, but I started with the stronger leg. That's how I started.
Yeah, exactly. Because the strong leg actually helps to stabilize your, whichever leg goes first, that's the, okay, well, Deborah, I mean, your therapist did really well in explaining that. Definitely. Starting off with good habits, using the affected leg first. That's great. But basically, the reason why therapists suggest using the unaffected or the stronger leg first is because quite often after stroke, a lot of stroke survivors have that whole knee thing going on where their knee wants to hyperextend or straighten out whenever they walk, or they're unable to bend that knee, and that basically means that leg isn't able to stabilize the weight of the body properly. And so what they request as a safety precaution is they ask survivors to use the stronger leg to take on most of the weight of the body whenever they're going upstairs, because they know that if they go up with the affected leg, it's going to straighten out on the knee, and it's not going to be good for them, and that's going to lead to falls. Because I don't know if you guys have experienced it, for those of you who are watching, but when your knee locks up whenever you're walking in recovery after stroke, it becomes quite easy to fall. You might get in a situation where it feels like it's quite difficult to go forward with your other leg because one leg is locking up. Yeah. Or you might feel like that your fight or flight mechanism has sort of kicked in, and then you freeze up for a bit.
Yeah.
I think I just repeated myself for a second there. Yeah.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally, completely understand. Now, for you, I never asked, you have some deficits right now, like one side or the other still affected?
Well, I mean, I can eat with two hands at the moment, which is great. That's something I've always wanted to do. Yeah, but I mean, I've got a lot of the gross movements back, but the fine dexterity is something which I'm still working on every single day.
Good. Good to hear. So you're working on the fine motor skills yourself.
Yeah. So basically what I do a lot of the times is I read the research and then I apply the research to myself as a sort of trial and error thing. And then I use whatever experience I get from that to build my own understanding of why I saw this improvement, whether that may be being able to lift up my arm a lot better, or lift up my fingers, or open my fingers a lot better.
Wow.
That's how I've been able to explain all these things in that simplified manner.
Great to hear. I'm looking forward to speaking to you off the show. But anyway, I don't know if there's any other questions, because we're down to like the last 30 seconds. So but first of all, William, I really do appreciate it. Is there any last final words that you want to encourage or say to everybody?
Oh, right, sure. I mean, I think we missed a couple of questions before. But anyway, for all of you who are still listening, what I want to do for all you guys today is I want to share a really simple exercise you can do to wake up your arm in your recovery after stroke. And this one will work for you if you're in a situation where you're in your recovery after stroke and you have no movement in your arm whatsoever, and for some reason it hasn't been responsive to any therapy. And does anyone want to hear what the exercise is?
Yeah, I'm sure they all do. Any kind of like
okay,
that.
So it will literally wake up your arm overnight if you do it correctly. So the way you do this exercise is it works based on this theory called cross-transfer learning. And basically this means that, okay, yes, please. Great. Okay, so this exercise basically works off a concept in neuroscience called cross-transfer learning, which is basically this idea that your brain actually recovers by using the stronger side, the unaffected hemisphere to rewire what was lost on the affected hemisphere. So our brain has two hemispheres, right? Our right hemisphere and our left hemisphere. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before our stroke, both of these hemispheres would be in constant communication, which explains why we were able to drive and talk at the same time, because one was focused on driving, the other one was focused on talking, so on and so forth, right?
Yep.
Now, how this relates to recovery after stroke is that there are actually certain parts of the body which are shared in between both hemispheres of the brain. That being said, parts of your body which is closest to the midline. So these would be your trunk muscles, so your abs, and also your shoulder muscles as well, and also the muscles which are very close to the insides of your hip as well. So what happens in recovery after stroke is that you can actually use one side to actually help get back what was lost on the other side. And to explain this a little bit better, in case I didn't explain it that well, is that you probably find that before your stroke, when you flex your abs, if you flex one side, the other side will go up, right?
Yeah.
So what they found with this whole idea of cross-transfer learning is that if you do certain movements on one side of the body, which is shared, one body part which is shared with the other hemisphere of the brain. So one body part which is controlled by one hemisphere, which also happens to be a body part which is shared with the other half of the body, you can actually get back movement on that other side of the body. So if you're affected on your right side of your body or your right arm, and you've got no movement in your left arm whatsoever, you can't lift up your left arm whatsoever, what you can do is you can actually do movements on your right arm to actually lift up your left arm. And the exercise is this, right? So what you want to do before you go to bed tonight is, while you're sitting up or while you're standing up, what you want to do is and this is going to work for you if okay, so I just lost myself, but I'll just use myself as an example. Say you're a survivor and your right side is affected, right? But your left side is unaffected, right? So your right side, your strong side, your left side, your weak side. Okay. So the way in which this works is, before you go to bed tonight, what you want to do is you want to do a couple of shoulder shrugs on your strong side, like so, right? And you want to do about 50 of these shoulder shrugs.
50.
And what this is going to do is this is actually going to attempt to send it. This is going to force your brain to attempt to send a signal from the stronger hemisphere over to the affected hemisphere to try and wake up that other left arm, which is the affected arm.
Sure.
And what you want to try and do is, the morning after, so tomorrow morning, as soon as you wake up, after you do these shoulder shrugs while standing up, and it has to be while standing up or sitting up at bed, is while you're lying down, what you want to do as soon as you wake up is you want to try and send a signal from your brain to try and lift up your affected side or affected arm. And what you'll find is that if you've done this correctly, you will be able to get a little bit of movement back on your left, on your affected arm or affected shoulder. You might have to strain quite a lot to get it back, but there will be movement if you've done it correct. And if you've got a movement back, that means that your brain has successfully used the stronger side, the unaffected hemisphere, to train the affected hemisphere how to lift up the arm, or because the muscles which control the shoulder, they're linked across, they're shared between both hemispheres, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Yeah, so I encourage everybody to do that. At least try that, because that's yeah. There's good to hear. Mike's he can't wait to try. Good to hear.
Mike.
Yeah, and but anyway, I appreciate all that. Good, yeah, Don. That's true. I appreciate it too, what William's doing. But anyway, William, thank you so much again for being here, and everybody else, thanks for being here and interacting with us all. So I hope everybody has a great day. And William, you have a great day, and I'll be talking to you in just a second here.
Awesome.
Take care, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you for your parting words. I appreciate it.